my name is Katie Clark, and today I'm going to be showing you how to make the most delicious and soft gingerbread cookies for this holiday season. Now, gingerbread is a baked good that is typically flavored with ginger, cloves, nutmeg, or cinnamon, and sweetened with sugar, honey, or molasses. This recipe will be using molasses. Now, the purpose of this video is to walk you through the steps and process of making these gingerbread man cookies. Now, gingerbread man cookies are a cookie made of gingerbread, as the name implies, usually in the shape of a stylized human. So I have a cookie cutter that is shaped like a little person. These are the typical gingerbread cookies that you would see in any Hallmark movie or just what you would imagine when you think of a gingerbread man cookie. Now, it's important to learn how to make these cookies because they are a staple in holiday baked goods and are a very tasty and delicious snack for everyone to enjoy. Now, the technical abilities needed for this process are just the ability to operate different machines and tools around the kitchen. So, for example, to use an oven. If you are younger, I would recommend having an adult come help you use the oven so that you don't burn yourself and you can make sure that all the settings are correct. There's also a hand mixer involved in this process and just some other miscellaneous tools around that you would find around your kitchen. Now, the estimated time to bake these cookies to make the dough is about, I'd say 30 minutes, but there is a 3-hour refrigeration process after the dough is made and then a 15-minute freezing process after you put the cookies onto your baking pan. So overall, I'd say probably about 3 hours and 45 minutes, just shy of 4 hours in total to make these cookies. So I would recommend starting this process earlier in the day so you're not having to stay up super late to do it. Now, this is really quite a simple recipe. It's very easy to follow, so no matter what your level of experience with baking is, you will be able to do this. In no time, you will have the most delicious gingerbread cookies to share with your family, or they may be so good that you may have to keep them all for yourself. Okay, so now I'm gonna go over the different ingredients and materials that you'll be needing for this process. The recipe I will be following is from Rosanna Pansino's Baking All Year Round cookbook. Here it is. If you want to find this cookbook for yourself, it's on her website, or she has a very popular YouTube channel where you can go and she has links to all of the websites where you can find this as well. So to start off, I'm going to be going over all of the ingredients that we have here. So first off, we have 4 cups of all-purpose flour. We have a stick and a half or 12 tablespoons of butter, unsalted butter. We have 1 cup of packed dark brown sugar, not light, dark brown. We have 1 teaspoon of baking soda. We have 1.5 teaspoons of ground ginger. We have half a teaspoon of ground cloves. We have 2 teaspoons of ground cinnamon. We have half a teaspoon of ground nutmeg. We have 1 teaspoon of salt, 1 egg. You'll need 3/4 cup of molasses, and this is all for the dough. And then for decorations and others, we have our gingerbread man cookie cutter, red hots for the little gingerbread man's buttons, and some cookie icing for the smaller lines. Now I'm going to show you some of the different tools that you will be needing. So first off, you need 2 bowls, 1 medium-sized bowl and 1 large-sized bowl. I have a whisk, a normal whisk, a spatula, an electric hand mixer, a rolling pin, some plastic wrap, some parchment paper, and I have 2 baking sheets to put the cookies on while they're in the oven. I also have an oven behind me. Okay, step number 1, we're going to, in a medium bowl, whisk together our flour, salt, baking soda, cinnamon, cloves, ginger, and nutmeg. So, first we put in our flour, and then go ahead and put the rest of our dry ingredients in, except for the brown sugar. And now, whisk until well combined. Now, once that is well combined, we're gonna set that off to the side and get our large bowl for the next step. Now, in a large bowl, we're going to beat together our butter and our brown sugar. Your butter should be room temperature to help with the mixing, to make it light and fluffy. We're mixing it with an electric mixer, and we're going to mix it for about 3 to 5 minutes until it's light and fluffy. I also like to take a spatula and scrape down the sides before I'm totally done, just to make sure I get all of the butter and brown sugar incorporated. And while I'm mixing, I like to turn the bowl, just again to make sure I'm getting everything incorporated and everything's getting well mixed. If your butter isn't at room temperature, say you forgot or it's still a little bit too chilly, you can throw it in the microwave. I like to do it in about 5-second increments just to soften it, not to melt it, but to soften it so that it's not still super hard and frozen. Otherwise, it's really hard to get this mixture to the consistency that you want it. Now, once that is light and fluffy, we're gonna move on to step 3. But a little tip, if you wanna get the rest of whatever's on your electric mixer on the blades off, put it in the bowl, but not on the bottom, not touching anything, and turn it on for just a couple seconds so it flings everything off, and you gotta get amount of it off. Okay, our next step is to mix in our egg and our 3/4 cup molasses. So, first, crack your egg, and it's the whole egg. Try not to get any shells. That was not a very graceful break on my part. It happens, you know, it happens sometimes. Next, gonna pour our molasses. I have a 3/4 cup measuring cup here. And we're just gonna pour that in here. Now I'm gonna use this same spoon to help get all of it out of the measuring cup. All right, and now we're going to mix this together with our electric mixer. Like before, I'm gonna take a little break so I can scrape down the sides, get everything back into the center. So that way we can get it all incorporated and back to mixing. All right, now we're going to combine our flour mixture with our wet mixture. So we're going to do half of it first, mix it, and then put in the second half. So, you can just eyeball this. It already smells so delicious. I cannot wait. I love gingerbread cookies. They are my favorite. All right, and you're going to want to mix this on a low speed. Otherwise, flour is just going to go everywhere, and we don't want that. All right, 1/2 done. Here's what it looks like. It's just a thicker consistency, thicker version of what it was before. Now we're gonna put in our second half. All right, once all of the flour is incorporated, we're ready to move on to our next step. If it looks really crumbly like this, still kind of sticking together, but it's kind of crumbly, that is perfect. That is exactly what we want it to look like. All right, now we're moving on to the next step. This smells delicious. I would eat it all right here if I could. Good. Sneak a little bite. So good. All right, so what we're gonna do now, I'm gonna move this out of the way for a second, is we're going to take some plastic wrap, get a good you know. Lay this out on the table. And now what we're going to do, I want my sleeves for this one, is we're gonna shape this dough into a disc and wrap it in the plastic wrap to go rest in the refrigerator for 3 hours. So, I'm gonna take all my hair ties too. I like to kind of just bunch it together a little bit while it's still in the bowl, so that way you don't have like loose pieces flying everywhere. I'll say this now, make sure you've washed your hands. You should wash your hands before you do any cooking. I washed my hands at the beginning of this video, but it's always a good idea, especially when you're making cookies and stuff, when you're actually going to be touching the dough. So I'm gonna go ahead and, there we go. Plop that out of the bowl. Kind of center it. It's pretty much in a disc shape just from being in the bowl and from me gathering it together. I'm gonna go ahead and get the pieces that are left over, still stuck in the bowl. And now, what you're going to do is you're going to wrap it. So, take one side, fold it up and over, and then I like to do the sides afterwards. Then we're going to take this side, wrap it up and over. This is what it should look like, just a big old disc of dough. I'm gonna let this rest in the refrigerator for 3 hours. While this is in the refrigerator, I'd recommend cleaning up your workspace. If there's any cookie dough left in the bowl, just, delicious. But I'll be back in 3 hours with our chilled dough. All right. This cookie dough has officially been chilling in the fridge for 3 hours. I went ahead and about 20 minutes before my timer went off for the 3 hour mark, I started preheating my oven so that way it would be totally warmed up and ready to go by the time the dough came out of the fridge. So now it's ready, so we're gonna go ahead and unwrap it like opening a Christmas gift. It's a very delicious one. I'm gonna go ahead, kind of move this off to the side a little bit for right now. And I have a bag of extra flour, so what we're gonna want to do now is take some flour and generously flour our work surface. We don't want our cookie dough sticking to the table because then it would just be a pain in the butt to unstick and it might ruin our cookie. So we're going to generously flour our workspace. And what I'm going to do to make this a little bit easier to work with is I'm going to break the cookie dough in half and do maybe even in quarters just to make it easier to work with. So we have that there. I'm going to take a little bit more flour and grab my rolling pin and cover my rolling pin, so that way the dough doesn't stick to the rolling pin either. Now we're going to roll this out. I can give a little bit of an explanation. So what putting your cookie dough in the fridge does is it helps it to keep its shape once you start cutting out shapes. And then after we get all of the cookie dough cut, all the shapes cut out, we pop it in the freezer and that does the same thing. It makes it so that once you put it in the oven, it will keep its shape a lot better than if you didn't. So what I am going to do really quick before I forget is I'm going to take our cookie sheets. I'm going to take one for right now, but I'll do the other one probably off screen, but I'll show you what I will do. I'm going to take one of my baking sheets and get some Pam. And I'm lightly going to spray the baking sheet. Set this off to the side. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my parchment paper and then put it on the baking sheet. And what spraying the Pam does is make it so that the baking or the parchment paper sticks onto the sheet rather than rolling up like it wants to. So now it sticks and it's not rolling up into like a roll. So I'm gonna leave this off to the side so that when we cut our cookie dough, or our cookie men, they have a place to go to. So I rolled out the cookie dough. You want it to be about 1/4 of an inch thick. So I'm gonna move this over here. I'm gonna take my cookie man, or my cookie cutter. We're just gonna cut our shapes. Wiggle it a little bit once you push it down, pull it up, and we have a beautiful cookie, or gingerbread man. I'm just gonna do that for the rest of the space I have on my dough. All right, I've cut as many shapes as I can fit into this little batch of dough that I have. I'm going to grab a spatula, like this one, gently peel away some of the dough from around our gingerbread men. Get my spatula underneath them so I can pick them up. And I'm going to transfer them to our baking sheet. And now I'm going to do that for the rest of the guys I have on the table. All right, so I have my first 4 placed on the baking sheet. Now I'm going to regather this dough and re-roll it out. I might go ahead and add some of the other quarter that I have and cut out more men. And just repeat this for the rest of our cookie dough. All right, I've officially rolled out most of my cookie dough. I do have a little bit left over, but I'm already on my 3rd baking sheet. This recipe does make approximately 24 cookies, so 2 dozen cookies. I have a little bit of extra cookie dough, and rather than get another baking sheet to put it in the oven, I don't have enough room in my oven, so I'm gonna go ahead and re-wrap this leftover cookie dough in the plastic wrap that we used before and just save it for another day, probably tomorrow, to make the rest of them. But now what we're gonna do is we're gonna take these cookies and we're gonna pop them into the freezer for 15 minutes so that they can get cold and keep their shape when we put them in the oven. So I'll see you in 15 minutes. All right, now that the cookies have been in the freezer for about 15 minutes, I'm going to pop them into the oven, which is still at 350 degrees, for 10 minutes or until the cookies are firm and they look dry. All right, 10 minutes has officially passed, so I'm gonna go ahead and get those cookies out of the oven. And normally you'd let them cool for maybe like 10 minutes before you do any decorations, but because of some of the decorations that I will be doing, you gotta do it pretty quickly after they get out of the oven. So I'm using a little like oven mitt thing that I made when I was really young and had for years. All right, I'm gonna turn the oven off really quick while I let these cool just the tiniest bit, not a ton, but a little bit. All right, so now I have my 3 baking sheets of gingerbread men in front of me. Let me grab another oven mitt and I can kind of show you what they look like. Let's flip this bad boy around. Look at how cute they are. And they already smell delicious. I am beyond excited to dig into these, but first, like I said, normally you would let these sit for a little while longer and chill before you do any icing or anything. Now, you can make your own icing, which I've done before, and I love to make my own icing, but due to the conditions of the world today, I couldn't really go out and get the ingredients to do that, so I have this store-bought cookie icing in white. But what we do while the cookies are still warm is I have these little red hots. And what we're gonna do, I'm gonna take a couple of them in my hand and we're gonna gently push them down onto the center of the cookie like 3 little buttons. And we wanna do it while it's still warm so that they kind of melt a little bit and they meld into the cookie. So I'll do a couple of them. That's 1 baking sheet done. Now I'm gonna go ahead and do that to the rest of my cookies. And I will be back after I'm done. All right, I just finished adding all the red hots as the buttons, and now I'm going to let them sit out and cool down for maybe about 10 minutes, just until they get cool enough so that when I put icing on, it won't just melt, it'll actually keep its shape. Just a little tip, if you decide to do this with the red hots, now you can decorate these cookies any way you want. this is just the way I'm choosing to decorate it. I think it's kind of this classic, really cute way to decorate them. And if you choose to also decorate them like this and you notice later that the red hots are falling off, maybe for me, I feel like this baking tray in particular, because it was the last tray for me to put the red hots on, the cookies may have cooled down a little bit too much for the red hots to really settle in and meld with the cookie. What you can do is you can just take a tiny bit of icing, put it on the back of the red hot and stick it back in, and it can act kind of like glue. So if you're having issues with that, that's what I would recommend to fix that. So we're gonna go ahead and let these cool down, and then I will come back and do the final bits of decorating. All right, now that I let these cookies cool for a couple of minutes on the trays, I'm gonna go ahead and take my icing and we're gonna pipe some really cute designs on it. What I'm gonna be doing is piping a smiley face and then some little squigglies on the arms and legs, kind of look like clothes. After I do that, I will show you what they look like up close. But like I said earlier, you can decorate these however you would like. It's totally up to you. All right, now these are the finished cookies. They've been decorated. As you can tell, I'm not the most skilled decorator. I definitely did improve as I got into the later cookies, so this front tray up here is probably some of my best work, while the tray back there, the first couple ones I did, not my best work. But like I said, you can decorate these any ways you want, but I think these are just so classic and cute. This icing that I got from the store worked really nicely because of the really small tip. That is a tip that I will give about decorating them. If you're gonna use icing like this, make sure you have a really small tip at the end of your icing bag, whether it be something like this, or if you make your own icing, get a very small icing tip. I believe this would be the equivalent of maybe a size 2 or 3. But yeah, I'm gonna let the icing harden a little bit before I move these guys to a tray to present, and then I will give my final conclusion. You all did awesome. I'm so proud of y'all. I'm sure y'all's cookies look great and they taste even better. All right, we're all done. These are the wonderful cookies that we have made today. Now just a couple of tips, warnings, just some fun stuff again towards the end. Again, if you are younger, please make sure you're using oven mitts and really taking the proper safety precautions when using an oven, whether that's having an adult help you or an older sibling, just making sure that you don't burn yourself. But you have successfully made these amazing gingerbread cookies. They smell amazing. They smell like the holidays and remind me of Christmas. I've made these probably 3 years in a row now, and every year they're always a big hit. They smell amazing, they look amazing, regardless of how you decorated them. Even the couple I may have messed up on a little bit still look good. And you know what? When they're in your belly, it doesn't matter what they look like. I didn't have any issues with my red hots, which I'm very excited about. That's super nice. I didn't have to worry about re-sticking those. But they look amazing, they smell amazing. Just a couple of tips. Because we're at a higher altitude, if you are at a high altitude, you may have to adjust the baking time depending on how high of an altitude you're at or how low of an altitude you're at. For the actual cookie dough, if it's not really sticking together, it's a little too dry and crumbly, you can add just the tiniest amount of water in like little increments, and then kind of remix it until it's just the right consistency, the right texture, or vice versa. If you do decide to make your own icing, kind of the same thing applies. If your icing is a little too runny, add a little bit of powdered sugar to it until it thickens up. And if your icing is too thick, you can add some water to it to help it be not as thick, be a little more viscous. That's how you say it. Now, the most fun and important part, the taste test. Now, which cookie will be my victim today? I'm thinking this dude over here. I think I'm gonna go for the head, make it quick and painless. That is so good. They're nice and soft. Let's see if I can show this off. Oh, that's red hot, red hot. They're super soft, they taste delicious, and I cannot wait for you to enjoy these yourself. Once again, y'all did awesome. Congrats, you have successfully made the, in my opinion, most delicious gingerbread cookies. I'll see you all later. Good job. Oh, so good.